In the last few videos we've been looking at our prison wall, the actual wall and the two supporting posts. I described them as hinges. I was maybe being optimistic. And this was the original teaching known as the Pratitya Samutpada. It was one of the earliest, if not the earliest, ways in which the Buddha formulated his enlightenment. And he did this by describing how we're trapped in our ignorance. And this ignorance is simply about being on automatic, automatically following our own inclinations or moods. It all boils down to these two factors: the moods and how our moods drive our attention. The key word here is usually desire. We generally like this message that desire is at the heart of all our problems. If we could desire less, then we'd all be a lot happier. But it's deeper than that. Why is our attention drawn to certain objects, people, situations, ideas in the first place? These are all possible objects of desire. Why these? And this wasn't actually gone into. The problem was simply established that we're subject to this desire. This desire promotes our ignorance, it promotes our being on automatic, and being on automatic promotes our desire. So what we're going to be looking at now is, well, how do we handle this desire? How do we handle the attention being drawn to these things in the first place? And we've come across a solution before. In fact, it's been the theme, very much the theme of these verses. And it's the theme of the next few verses. So let's look at verse 296. Multitudinousness of differentiations is imagined as real by the ignorant, but being like Maya, they obtain not. Varieties of individual forms are discriminated as such, but they really do not obtain. So rather than just try and rein in your desires, which more often than not has the outcome of reinforcing the desires, what we need to do in order to cut them off completely is realize that what we're desiring, what motivates the attention to focus on certain things, is not what we think it is. This verse is telling us that all these things that we differentiate, as in I want that and not that, the very basis for that differentiation is wrong. We're told that being like Maya they obtain not. Maya is like the dream. We differentiate things in a dream, don't we? But it's all just dream. It's all just Maya. Maya is like the mirage. When you know something's in a dream, you immediately cut off from it. You no longer take it in its own terms. When you realize something's a mirage or a hallucination, you cut off from it. You no longer take it in its own terms. And when you realize that all of this is of the same nature, then when you've woken up from its seductive appearances, then you no longer relate to it in its own terms. You're free of it. Varieties of individual forms are discriminated as such, but they really do not obtain. In other words, they're not really varieties of individual forms. So this is quite an extraordinary thing, isn't it? We're being told something about the nature of the world which flies in the face of our gut instincts. So the thing is, how can we realize this? We can make lots of arguments for it, lots of intellectual arguments, but these others are quite interesting from a philosophical point of view. They don't really get beyond these gut feelings. We need to realize this. And this is the problem. And it's something I've explored in many of the previous videos. But we need to realize this, which means experiencing it. And to experience this, we need to come back to experiencing ourselves. Experiencing ourselves as deeply as possible. Because what's happening is this idea that there's something out there of substance. It's always drawing our attention out. And in drawing our attention out, it depletes us. It depletes our sense of self. It may be that this is the appeal of music, especially music as listened to on a personal player. It shuts the world out. It brings you back. Okay, you're still focusing on that music, so you're not quite there, but you've taken a step at least. You've taken a step. You've taken a step in the right direction. This might not sound very good in worldly terms. Oh, it conjures up images of alienated youth and all the rest of it. But spiritually, we're not interested in what the world says. We're wanting to step back from the world. We'd also have to step back from that music that we're hearing through our earphones. And something else we'd have to step back from is our own mind. We not only have to learn to ignore the world, but to ignore our mind. And this is difficult if we're in a particular mood. You might find it's easier to do this at certain times more than others, and that's fine. That's fine. But what we're interested in is the times that we cannot do this. I've been going through some very interesting times over the last 6 or 7 years. There seems to be something very uncomfortable going on in my mind and body. About 5 or 6 years ago, my body seized up almost completely. For about 6 months, I could barely get up and down stairs or out of a chair. I couldn't get my hand to my mouth to brush my teeth. I learnt to brush my teeth with my other hand, but it's like there was this trauma in my body. I was aware of it moving from one side of my body to the other, and then I couldn't brush my teeth with I couldn't reach my mouth with my other hand. And I mentioned previously about a job I started, a night shift job that I started over a year ago. And for some reason, I found this very traumatic. I was experiencing something akin to panic. There's still this sense of trauma in my system, which previously affected me physically, but still affected me emotionally. And it seems to have worked its way through by and large. But there's still elements of it there. There's still elements of my body failing to engage and of feelings of panic coming up. So it's difficult at these points to practice, but these are the points where it's actually quite good to practice. And in fact, when I started this job, I felt like I was going through something like a nervous breakdown. It was something, though, that I was observing. And his teachings helped immensely in this, because they helped me to put it out there. They weren't who I am. The nervous breakdown wasn't who I was. So, there's 2 factors here. There's the attention and our moods. We need to observe how the moods are driving the attention, and whenever possible, step beyond our moods. No matter how seductive that mood is. Our moods are very seductive because we're very attached to them. We want to keep reinforcing them. This is called becoming, rebirth. Our moods are who we are. Even though they're intensely uncomfortable, we're very attached to them. Otherwise, why would people indulge in things like jealousy, resentment, anger, road rage? So this is the challenge. Getting beyond our moods. And if we've done this, even for an instant, then we're no longer getting caught up in differentiations, differentiating this from that, and emotionally investing in these differentiations. I like this, stay away from that. Verse 297 tells us to imagine individual forms is wrong. It puts one in bondage. I think I'll leave the rest of this verse to the next video. But that's it. To imagine individual forms is wrong. And the process here is of not just imagining, but putting the attention on these forms and to investing emotionally in them. So if we can come back, bring the attention back. The attention is awareness. It's the greatest miracle. I was watching a program last night on how big the universe is, and it started off just with our own galaxy, with its 500 billion stars and being 100,000 light years across. Our own galaxy is mind-boggling enough, but then there's billions upon billions of galaxies in the universe, and then there's all the dark matter and dark energy and so on. Absolutely mind-boggling stuff. But nothing compares to what that is arising within. It's arising within our very own awareness. This attention of ours, which we're using all the time, and which is, and don't take my word for it, just look into it yourself, absolutely, totally miraculous. So, this is the miracle we can keep coming back to. It's not such a struggle, really.